How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the KastKing channel. My name is Ethen Preston, KastKing Pro Team member. In today's video, I want to talk to you about one of my favorite ways to catch walleyes in the middle of the summer. There should be no surprise here. If you guys are into walleye fishing, you might have done this, might have heard this, see videos on it, that kind of thing. And that is pulling a spinner rig on a bottom bouncer. Now, it can be a slower way to fish, but is probably one of my favorite ways to actually target mass amounts of walleyes that may not actually be super hungry, and you can cover a lot of ground by doing this. So I'm going to talk to you about my setups, the rods, reel, line, and kind of how I like to go about fishing these things to have success for walleyes in the summer. First off, let's talk about the components of your spinner rig. We're going to start with your hook. So you can have any kind of regular octopus hook, anything like that, or you can do a slow death hook like this, which I'm going to be running a night crawler on, or a fake night crawler like a Gulp Alive, something like that. That's kind of the crooked looking hook there, allows a good spinning action for that bait to stay there if I'm running a night crawler or even a leech style bait, plastic or live bait. If I'm going to run a minnow style bait or a minnow itself, or even a smaller piece of crawler, you're just going to use your octopus hook. Anytime you're going to drop shot, if you're bass fishing, walleye fishing, octopus hook, something like that, that's what I'm going to run my minnow style baits on there, because I don't want them to spin, I want them to swim. Next, we're going to have our beads. Play with your bead colors. You can make these yourself. These are the ones I've made myself. Color combinations, I tend to stay with silver, whites, and greens, maybe a red here or there, as you see here. That's what I find for walleyes. And then you're going to have your spinner portion of it. The whole thing that attracts the fish in here is your spinner blade. This little clevis here allows me to take this blade on and off, and I do play with colors of spinners every now and then. Most of the time, your hammered silver and your hammered golds. If I'm around targeting walleyes that are around bait fish a lot or eating bait fish, minnows, white bass, stuff like that, it's really hard to go wrong with some kind of hammered gold or hammered silver. I have that on a lead here. I think this is 24, 36 inches of fluorocarbon here. I think this 12-pound fluorocarbon tied with a loop. And then what you've got here is you're going to connect this whole spinner setup to a bottom bouncer of some sort. What this piece of lead's job is to hold this spinner. If you throw this out by yourself, it's going to take forever to get to the bottom. You're connecting it to this bottom bouncer. This is taking it to the bottom. This is going to scrape on the bottom, and then keeping your setup here up and above. A lot of times hitting the bottom with this piece of wire and lead here, if you're on sand or something like that, or even rocks, it's going to make a bunch of noise. The walleyes or fish you're fishing for are going to come up and see the spinner blade, and then they're going to see the bait there and go ahead and take that. So that's kind of our setup. I'm going to talk to you about some of the rods I like to use for it and some of the areas that we're going to try and catch them in. So we're going to talk about a spinning rod setup and a bait casting rod setup that I like to use. This is the KastKing Valiant Eagle Passage rod. It's actually a 3-piece bait casting rod. This is a 7/6 heavy with a fast action tip on there, okay? And then I've just got a Speed Demon or Speed Demon Elite bait casting reel. The thing I really like about this one is a short butt section here. If you have rod holders or anything in your boat, that's great. You can set it in there. My bass boat, I don't have rod holders, and so I'm ended up standing at the front of the boat with the trolling motor in the water, or hanging it over the side of the boat in my driver's seat by hand the whole time. And that's the case. I don't like a long butt section hitting the side of my boat and stuff like that. It sits right here. It ends up sitting below my elbow, and it's just a perfect action for me. And it's got the cork above it if you just want to hold it above. You don't need anything super special for spinners. When the walleyes eat it, they're going to eat it. I run a braided line for the main line connected to that bottom bouncer, and then you've got your fluorocarbon or your monofilament running to your spinner. This is the KastKing Wide-Eye Walleye Power Jig Rod. This is a 7/1 length rod here. It's a medium light with a fast action tip. I'm running this on lighter bottom bouncers. I would say an ounce or less, because you have to let out so much line for those lighter bottom bouncers to stay on the bottom. I'm doing this in clear water or shallower water, to where when the boat goes over top of the fish or the structure and then immediately a bait comes along, they can get a little bit weary. So if a boat goes over and then a little bit later the rig comes by with the weight and the spinner on the back, that's when I'm going to do that. This is the KastKing Speed Demon Elite spinning reel. This is a 7/4 to gear ratio reel. Again, this is a faster reel. And I've got the 15-pound KastKing 13X spinning reel specific braided line there. Why I like the faster gear ratio reel is because if there's snags coming up or anything like that, we can crank our rig up a lot quicker. Or if we have a fish hooked on, you're allowed to just bring it in faster. I'm not necessarily using a ton of drag here I just want to get that fish in as quick as possible. If it's a bigger fish, yes, I'll turn my drag down, but you still got a lot of weight in front of that fish with the bottom bouncer, causing it that they could throw your hook a little bit easier. So I like to crank them in and get them to the net. Lastly, where do I like to fish for walleyes using a spinner rig in the summertime? That's pretty easy. Look for your bug hatches first off. And what I talk about there is if you got a lot of mayfly hatches, stuff like that in your area, then I'm going to a mud flat. That's, you got to use your electronics a little bit, and you're going to be able to see where it's a softer, duller colored bottom. A lot of the bugs and their larvae live in that mud bottom, and then when they're ready to hatch, they come up to the surface, then the larva turns into a fly. So a lot of times walleyes will live in mud basins all year long, rooting around eating the larva, but especially during the bug hatch, that's where I'm going to first. Otherwise, rock piles, stuff like that, I'll be trolling around the outside edge. I won't necessarily go over top of them because you're gonna get snagged up, stuff like that. You can throw a slip bobber and other techniques over top of a rock pile or that kind of thing to kind of stay out of the snags, or even a jig and wrap that we talked about before, those kinds of things. Otherwise, road beds. On top of the road beds or in the ditches, most of the underwater road beds are kind of eroded, so those rip wraps and stuff where the road bed used to be, they're not necessarily super snaggy or anything like that. Go on top of the road bed or in the ditches, find where the fish are hanging out, that kind of thing. And those are where I love to fish those spinners. I know it takes a little bit more time, but you can catch majority of the fish you come across because that rig is just kind of hovering there as it goes by. And if you got the right bait on there, the right color spinner to attract them, it's really hard for a walleye to turn down a snack like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. We're getting ready here to go up and do a family camping trip and do some walleye fishing here in North Dakota. So just wanted to get on here and tell you about one of these techniques that I like to fish. Even though we're out of a bass boat, we catch tons of walleyes doing this in the heat of the summer. So go ahead and check out all the other videos on the KastKing channel. A lot of cool people doing cool things. And again, I'm Ethen Preston, a KastKing Pro Team member here. Hope you enjoyed the video and tune in next time.